ईश्वरात् कृतं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनिये नमः। वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयं नत्वा सरस्वतीं देवीं शुद्धां गुण्यां करोम्यहं पाणिनीयप्रवेशाय लघुसिद्धान्तकौमुदीम्। बाध्यबाधकभावस्य अध्ययनं प्रचलतस्ति। तत्र अष्टाध्याय्यां बाध्यबाधकभावस्य कथं निर्णयः करणीयः इत्यस्मिन् विषये परिभाषेन्दुशेखरे आदौ एका परिभाषा विद्यते पूर्वपरनित्यान्तरङ्गापवादानाम् उत्तरोत्तरं बलीयः इति। तदनन्तरं तस्याः एव परिभाषायाः भिन्नानाम् अंशानाम् अग्रे विस्तरः क्रियते। सो फर्स्ट ही टॉक्स अबाउट पूर्व पर। तस्मिन् सन्दर्भे अस्माभिः सुकृद्गतो विप्रतिषेधे यद्बाधितं तद्बाधितमेव पुनः प्रसङ्गविज्ञानात् सिद्धम् इति परिभाषाद्वयं दृष्टम्। Then he goes to Nitya versus Anitya. You always need to remember stock examples for each of them. Purvapara, Supicha versus Bahuvachani Jhalyeta. Then Nitya Anitya. Typical example is Tudati or say Likhati, where the Upadha guna or the Antima Varnasya guna is blocked. Then we did the discussion of Antaranga, Bahiranga. And finally, we moved on to Utsarga and Apavada. उत्सर्ग तथा अपवादः इत्येतयोः विषये परिभाषेन्दुशेखरे येन नाप्राप्ते यो विधिरारभ्यते स तस्य बाधको भवति इति परिभाषा दीयते. So we discussed this paribhasha in details. We also talked another definition of apavada, namely niravakashatvam apavadasya bijam. And then we understood the difference between niravakashatvam, which is basically the cause of being an apavada, whereas the relationship between utsarga and apavada, the apavada will block the utsarga, saha tasya badhako bhavati. अतः अस्याः परिभाषायाः वस्तुतः खण्डद्वयं वर्तते. येन नाप्राप्ते यो विधिः आरभ्यते सः अपवादः. So we talked about an example where we have an inner circle, a vidhi is present in that inner circle, and then the outer circle, a different vidhi is present in the outer circle. Whenever the vidhi of the inner circle is possible, the vidhi of the outer circle will always be possible. येन ना प्राप्ते इत्युक्ते येन उत्सर्ग सूत्रेण अवश्यं प्राप्ते एव यः अपवाद विधिः आरभ्यते. So that's the full meaning of that particular sentence. येन न प्राप्ते यो विधिरारभ्यते सः अपवादः अन्यः उत्सर्गः. So this is definition of utsarga versus apavada, and then he gives a blanket rule: अपवादः उत्सर्गस्य बाधकः भवति, सः तस्य बाधकः भवति. Now in this particular context we talked about two types of badhya badhaka bhavas or two types of badhakas. असति संभवे बाधनं भवति and सत्यपि संभवे बाधनं भवति. असति संभवे बाधनं भवति when the utsarga and the apavada cannot coexist simultaneously. One of them says does akaradesha, other says does lopa, something like that. Then you have to choose one over the other. Asati sambhave badhanam bhavati. In that case, the apavada sutra wins over the utsarga sutra. We saw a lot of examples of this. So most of the examples were enumerated by you all only. Hodhaha versus Dadir Dhaturghaha, Jhalanjashonte versus Sasarushoruhu, Swamor Napumsakat versus Atom, that's a stock example. We talked about Halnyabhyo Dirghat versus Sambuddhaucha for the Sambodhan Ekvachan of the Mala word. Then we have Anapyakaha versus Halilopaha, Kartari Shapa versus Divadibhyashana, Bhinnani Udaharanani Asmabhyasmin Sandarbhe Drishtani. We also saw a Nyaya that reflects the meaning of asati sambhave badhanam bhavati, mathara pariveshana nyaya, also called as mathara kaundinya pariveshana nyaya. So sarvaihi bhujyatam matharaha pariveshayet, nochit mathara kaundinyo pariveshayetam. So let all the other Brahmins eat, mathara serve the others. Now mathara cannot do both the acts simultaneously. Mathara cannot eat and serve. Therefore, asati sambhave badhanam bhavati. The act of serving completely blocks the act of eating, asati sambhave badhanam bhavati. The fundamental point to understand over here is that in case of asati sambhave badhanam bhavati, it is obvious that apavada will win over utsarga. You do not need any paribhasha in the paribhashendu shekhara for telling that apavada wins over the utsarga if it is the case of asati sambhave badhanam bhavati. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Can somebody explain me why we say that you do not need the paribhasha apavadaha utsargasya badhakaha bhavati? This paribhasha is not required to say apavada wins over utsarga in the case of asati sambhave badhanam bhavati. Why?
Coexistence is not possible, so it takes precedence.
Coexistence is not possible. This is understood. But then why apavada should win over utsarga?
The basic construct, the way the sutras works is that's how it wins.
Correct. So in Ashtadhyayi, there'll be a more general sutra and there'll be a specific sutra. And obviously, if we decide to apply the general sutra, the specific sutra will become Niravakasha. Then there is no reason to write that sutra. But Panini Maharshi has written that sutra. That itself is a proof that the Apavada Sutra will take the precedence over Utsarga or will block the Utsarga. The virtue of existence of Apavada Sutra is sufficient to prove that Apavada will block the Utsarga. Therefore, in case of Asati Sambhave Badhanam Bhavati, you do not need the Paribhasha Sahatasya Badhako Bhavati. This particular paribhasha sahatasya badhako bhavati is required in the second case satyapi sambhave badhanam bhavati, when the utsarga and apavada can coexist simultaneously. Even in that case, we want the utsarga to be blocked by the apavada. The example that we gave, the nyaya, the analogy that we gave was takra kaundinya nyaya. दधि सर्वेभ्यो दीयताम तक्रम kaundinyaya. If the host says this, the kaundinya can technically have dahi first and then takra, or he can have takra first and then dahi. One of them cannot block another. First, in the sense, at the same time, he can have takra from in one hand and dahi in another hand. That is not blocked. Or even one after the other is okay. Take takra first and then dahi, take dahi first and then takra. That's not an issue. So satyapi sambhave, ubhayatha sambhavah shakyah, satyapi sambhave badhanam bhavati. So by this nyaya we say takradanam dadhidanasya nivartakam bhavati. The takradana blocks the dadhidana. That is satyapi sambhave badhanam bhavati. The typical example that commentaries give is Ami Sarvanamnaha Sutta versus Rasvanadhya Ponutta. We saw that example in details. For Sarva Shabda Shashti Bahuvachanam, we have Ami Sarvanamnaha Sutta that gives the Sudagama, Rasvanadhya Ponutta that gives the Nudagama. Both agamas can come one after the other. So Sam can also be called as Am and Nudagama can come. Nam can also be called as Am and Sudagama can come, but then one will block the another. Satyati sambhave badhanam bhavati. Another example that we discussed in the class, Trestrayaha versus Rasvanadhyaponuta. Technically not a very good example. Why? Because Trestrayaha and Rasvanadhyaponuta, we apply Trestrayaha and we then apply Rasvanadhyaponuta. So it is not, it is permanently blocked. But we can make a case over here. In case of Trestrayaha and Rasvanadhyaponuta, it was 3 because of which the Nuragama was coming. When 3 gets converted to Traya, it is because of Traya, Akara, because of which the Nudagama is coming. So we can make a case, maybe a weak case, but we can make a case that on the next step, a different instance of Rasvanadhyaponuta is coming up. Whereas in the first case, the competition between Trestraya and Rasvanadhyaponuta, the Rasvanadhyaponuta was coming because of the Ikara. So somewhat acceptable case. But the better examples are Ami Sarvanamnaha Sutta and Hrasvanadhyaponuta. Another example is Adev Parasya and Alontyasya. That also we saw in the class that day. Alontyasya will tell that the Adesha happens on the last entity. Adev Parasya, Parasya yaha adeshah. So that's an extra condition. And that's the reason it becomes apavada. Parasya yaha adeshah saha adivarnasya bhavati. Now you can do adesh on the antima varna and adivarna one after the other, but still satyapi sambhave badhanam bhavati. Another example of Satyapi Sambhave Badhanam Bhavati is seen in the Dvitva Prakaranam. You have a sutram, Ekacho Dve Prathamasya. Some of you might have studied Dvitva. It says that in case of Dvitva Prakaranam, when the Dvitva has not yet happened, प्रथमस्य द्वित्वं भवति प्रथमस्य इत्युक्ते प्रथमस्वरस्य द्वित्वं भवति धातोः प्रथमस्य एकाच अवयवस्य if usually dhatus have one swara but if there are multiple swaras in the dhatu the first swara will undergo a dvitva ekacho dve prathamasya whereas the immediate next sutram ajadehe dvitiyasya says that if the dhatu is ajadi dhatu then dvitiyasya dvitvam bhavati. So you can clearly see सर्वेषां धातूनां प्रथमवर्णस्य द्वित्वं भवति परन्तु अजादिः धातुः अस्ति चेत् द्वितीयवर्णस्य द्वित्वं भवति. Clearly there is utsargapavada relation. Now this you can do dvitva on both. You can do the dvitva on first ach and you can do dvitva second ach. So this is satyapi sambhave. Both the utsarga and apavada are simultaneously applicable, but still satyapi sambhave badhanam bhavati. These are various examples of satyapi sambhave badhanam bhavati. This is where the paribhasha yena na prapte yo vidhi arabhyate satasya badhako bhavati is important. Because if that paribhasha would not have been there, you can do the dvitu on the first and you can do the dvitu on the second. You can do the antyadesha and you can do the adyadesha. You can do sudagama and then you can do nudagama. So you can operate utsarga and apavada one after the other. We don't want that. We want only apavada to be operated, not the utsarga. How do you block the utsarga? By saying satyapi sambhave badhanam bhavati, by saying yena na prapte yo vidirarabhyate satasya badhako bhavati. So essentially, when it comes to the relationship between utsarga and apavada, we can enumerate at least three different cases, three different possibilities. The key point over here is that the relationship utsarga and apavada has nothing to do with badhya versus badhaka. The more specific sutram, Vishesha Shastram, is called apavada. The Samanya Shastram is called utsarga. Who blocks whom? So we have three choices. Apavada will permanently block the utsarga. Apavada will optionally block the utsarga. Apavada will not block the utsarga. Three possible cases are there. The first of these, apavada blocks the utsarga compulsorily, is being given by yena na prapte yo vidhirarabhyate sa tasya badhako bhavati. Apavadaha utsargasya badhako bhavati. Apavada will compulsorily block the utsarga when in both cases when the apavada can utsarga coexist satyapi sambhave badhanam bhavati and when they cannot coexist asati sambhave badhanam bhavati. So actually this paribhasha has two components satyapi sambhave and asati sambhave. Technically for asati sambhave paribhasha is not required at all. The importance of paribhasha is for satyapi sambhave, but now that paribhasha is there you might be able to apply for both of them. Asati sambhave badhanam bhavati and satyapi sambhave badhanam bhavati, both of them are encompassed under a single paribhasha yena na prapte yo vidhirarabhyate satasya badhako bhavati. Both of them tell us apavada blocks the utsarga compulsorily.
So it is concerned about the full prakriya, not just in that step, is what we are saying, right? The badaka, not in that one step.
No, the badhaka
But
is
it,
only in that one step. See, what full prakriya is out of question over here. If there is a different particle, then the interaction is different. We are talking about interaction on a particular particle. When you say sudagama happens, the sut sahita arm is considered arm itself. Therefore, na nudagama can come.
so
If
then
it
that
was
will
different,
become the next step, right? Like if you are saying the sudagama, that is Sam will be considered, and then you can again apply is what in the next step you can apply the Hasvanadhyaponuta is what we are talking about, right? Like not in the same.
technically, Technically, now this is going into technicalities because you can do only one karya in one step. You cannot do 100 karyas in one step. If 100 karyas are simultaneously applicable, you still have to order them in some way and do one karya in one step, other karya in other step. It's your limitation of writing. See, the steps in the prakriya are not equivalent to timeline. We are not saying first this happens, then that happens, and then that happens. We are just saying that this is one karya, this is other karya, this is third karya, and sometimes they might be dependent on each other, sometimes they might not be dependent on each other. So in case of Sudagama versus Nudagama, the Nudagama is not dependent on Sudagama. It's not that, unlike Dirgha, for example, Phalani, there is a Numagama, and after doing the Numagama, only then you can do Dirgha because of Sarvanama Sthanicha Asambuddha. So then Numagama has to be done before, and only then Dirgha can happen. But in case of Sarvesham, it is not like that. You can do Sudagama, and then whether or not you do Sudagama, whether it is Sam or Am, it is Am, which means you can do the Nudagama. So Nudagama is not blocked on Sudagama over there. Whether you write it which before and which after doesn't really matter.
Okay, if we say that the Sudagama, after the Sudagama also we are saying, even if we are not saying concurrently, we don't apply. For an example, we just apply it one after another. If we take it like that, so even after the Sudagama is applied, we don't apply the Nudagama. We deliberately stop the Nudagama being applied.
Correct. Correct.
And that is what we call it as Badaka.
Correct. The Sudagama will block the Nudagama, that is Badhaka. That is Badhya Badhaka. So Sudagama is Badhaka and Nudagama is Badhya. Not clear.
No, that is there, but yeah, still I'm thinking the reapplication or the application in the same prakriya in another place, can it happen or not?
That is obviously possible. Tres Trayaha is the example. In case of Tres Trayaha and Hrasvanadhyaponuta, the Hrasvanadhyaponuta is blocked on the three word, and then three becomes Traya, and then again Hrasvanadhyaponuta is possible, but it is possible because of the Hrasvatva of Akara in Traya and not Hrasvatva of Ikara in three. Therefore, a
Yeah,
different application of
basically you are saying
Hrasvanadhyaponuta.
if it stands like a tree itself, if the niyama didn't change, it will not come back. The Hrasvanadhyapanuta, you will not put it back. Just because the niyama is changing, you are putting it. Is what you're saying.
Is what a possible way to explain that why Rasvanadhyaponuta is coming on the next step. If the Rasvanadhyaponuta was not applicable for the Akara of Traya and it was only applicable for Ikara of 3, what we would have said hypothetically is that after doing Tres Trayaha, Sthanivat Bhavena Traya iti 3 ityeva asti. अतः तत्र तस्य ह्रस्वनद्यापोनुटसूत्रस्य प्राप्तिः अवश्यं वर्तते, परन्तु पुनः तत्र तत्सूत्रं न प्रवर्तते. why? सत्यपि संभवे वादनं भवति. But we are not saying that for multiple reasons. I'll explain the reason in a while, but one of them is because there is a different traya which can do the ह्रस्वनद्यापोनुट. Take the example of, say, Ekacho Dve Prathamasya and Ajadir Dvitiyasya. You can do the Dvitva on the first letter and you can do the Dvitva on the second letter. Letter in the sense Acha. It's technically not Acha, it is Ekach Avyaya, but you can ignore the specifications. You can just say first component and second component. So Ekacho Dve Prathamasya says do the Dvitva on the first component. Ajadir Dvitiyasya says that if the verb is Ajadi, do the Dvitvam on the second component. Now assume the verb is Ajadi. Can't you do Dvitvam on both components? Now you can't do it simultaneously in the same step. You can technically, but you have to show the prakriya properly. So you will show the Dvitvam on the first step on one component, and then on the next step you show the Dvitvam on other component. Now that Dvitvam on other component has nothing to do with Dvitvam on first component. Just like the way Nudagama has nothing to do with Sudagama. Which order you show is irrelevant.
So can this
Clear?
be, what I'm asking, can this be equated to the Sakritgatau Yad Baditam Tad Baditam Eva in, saying that for the Vipratishede and saying this for the Utsarga Apavada, are those both the same?
Kind of. Sakrutgato Vipratishethe Yad Baditam Dad Baditam Eva explicitly has the word Vipratishetha, so you don't use it in this context. you specifically use apavadha utsargasya badhako bhavati, but satyapi sambhave badhanam bhavati has the same spirit of sakrudgato vipratishedhe yad badhitam tad badhitam.
And in the Satgrit Gatau, we say that okay, once if the sutra is rejected or if it is lost, then again in the next step or after few series of steps, you will not be able to apply. Is what is
After
the
a few series of steps, you can
most
always see sakrudgato vipratishedhe. In a particular vipratishedha, when a sutra is blocked, it is permanently blocked for that vipratishedha. And there are 10 vipratishedhas at 10 different steps. You don't have to choose the result of first vipratishedha for the second vipratishedha, right? They're completely independent components. I mean, for example, there might be Antima Varna Lopa by Yasya teacher, and there might be Adi Varna Vruddhi by Tadhite Shochamadehe. These are two different components. There will be different Vipratisheda for the Antima Varna Lopa, there will be different Vipratisheda for the Adi Vruddhi. It's not necessary that whatever conflict resolution happens on one will be considered valid for another. No reason. They're completely two different Vipratishedas. Because see, you don't know where a sutra will appear in any prakriya. A sutra might appear in hundreds, thousands of prakriyas. So just by saying that this certain sutra wins over another and that is applicable for rest of the steps in the prakriya is definitely very weird. We are talking about a particular badhya badhaka. Let it be nitya nitya, let it be utsarga pavada, let it be vipratishedha, purvapara, whatever. Any further questions? Any further questions? So as I was saying, once you define apavada and utsarga, you have three choices. Apavadaha utsargam sampurna rupena badhate, apavadaha utsargam vikalpena badhate, apavadaha utsargam na badhate. All three choices are possible and we have three different paribhashas to capture the cases for each of them. So yena na prapte yo vidhirarabhyate satasya badhako bhavati tells us apavadaha utsargam nityam badhate. The immediately next paribhasha 59 क्वचित् अपवाद विषये अपि उत्सर्गः अभिनिविशते. Sometimes utsarga can also come after apavada. Kvachid apavada vishaye api utsargaha abhinivishate. Technically apavada is expected to block the utsarga, but apavada does not block the utsarga. Apavada will be there and then utsarga will come. Kvachid, sometimes. Apavada vishaye api. Apavada, that is the badhaka. The badhaka sutra will come first and then the badhya sutra will automatically come. Apavada does not block the utsarga. This is possible only in case of satyapi sambhave. If it is asati sambhave, it obviously has to block. Otherwise, the apavada becomes niravakasha, apavada becomes useless. So, satyapi sambhave, in that case, the apavada will fail to block the utsarga. Very few examples. One example, you can take the example of actually Tres Trayaha and Rasvanadhyapanuta in this context. Technically, Tres Trayaha is the apavada of Rasvanadhyapanuta, but after applying Tres Trayaha, after becoming three as Traya, Traya can be treated like three and Rasvanadhyapanuta, which was blocked on the previous step, can actually come. So as I said, this example can be looked into both ways. If you say the Nudagama is happening because of Traya, it is a separate step and we don't discuss the Utsarga Pavada there. If you say Traya is the same as Tri by Sthanivat Bhava, then for that Tri Rasvanadhyapanuta was blocked in the previous step, and again for that Tri Rasvanadhyapanuta is coming. So you have the example of Vachid Apavada Vishaye Utsargaha Api Abhinivishate. A more familiar example is Malayam. For the word Malayam, what is the prakriya? You have Neram Nadyam Nibhyaha and Yadapaha. Yadapaha is going to do a Yat Agama. Let's take a look at the Yadapa Sutra. Yadapaha Sutra says Yat Agamaha Bhavati Abantat Angat Parasya Nit Pratyayasya Yat Agamaha Bhavati. So, Nye Pratyaya, it becomes Malayai. Nasi pratyaya malayaha, nas pratyaya malayaha, and so on. For the saptami ekvachana, ni pratyaya, yadapaha will cause a yat agama. And then we have Ngeram nadyam nibhyah, some 3 sutras later itself. So Ngeram nadyam nibhyah, it says abantat parasya saptami ekvachanasya ni pratyayasya am adeshah bhavati. So abantat parasya nit pratyayasya adagamah. Abantat parasya ni pratyayasya am adeshah. Clearly, Ngeram Nadyam Nibhya is the specific sutra, specific for the case of Abantat Parasya. You don't take the full sutra. A small component is, it's okay if it becomes Nirvakashya. We have seen multiple examples. So, Ngeram Nadyam Nibhya is an apavada for Yadapaha. However, when you do the prakriya of Malayam, you do Ngeram Nadyam Nibhya and then do Yadapaha. The apavada comes first and then the utsarga. Kvachit apavada vishaye api utsargaha abhinivishate. The apavada is coming. Neram nadyam nibhyaha will force am adesha. Yadapaha would have caused yat as agama. Both of them are in the same step. One of them is apavada. Apavada obviously comes first, but it fails to block the utsarga. The utsarga will come on the next step. Okay, very few examples. Trestraya can be considered as one example. Malayam can be considered as another example. What is the paribhasha? Kvachit apavada vishaye api utsargaha abhinivishate. So this is the second type of conflict resolution. First was apavadaha utsargasya sampurna rupena badhakaha bhavati. Dvitiyam apavadaha utsargasya naiva badhakaha bhavati. Clear?
Mahodaya, can we look into how this Neram Nadyam Nibhyaha is an apavada to Yadapaha? So we do take specific components alone and we are able to see that it's a
You
apavada.
have
So
to, right? This is the same principle that you used when you said Vrashta Bhrajya is an apavada for Chohokuhu. The fact that Vrashta and Bhrajya is used in that sutra is sufficient to say it is apavada of Chohokuhu. In the same
that
way,
is this, we said that specific words, yeah, like
there is a specific
those
word called abanta,
specific.
right? Why is ab used in this particular sutra? Why doesn't it say Nadini Bhyahange am? Why does it say abanta? So that's a specific word. So specific words is, that's exactly what we are saying. Vishesha Shastram versus Samanya Shastram. So this actually helps you to destroy your original idea of Utsarga Apavada as one circle inside another circle. Technically, Neram Nadyam Nibhya is not an inner circle outside the outer circle of Yadapaha. But Neram Nadyam Nibhya is technically 3 distinct circles. And one of that circle is inside Yadapaha. Therefore, it continues to become apavada of Yadapa. This
So,
is why we
Mahodaya,
say Niravakashatvam apavadasya bijam. Is there a Niravakashatvam? Yes,
For
there
the
is
arc
Niravakashatvam.
component alone, there is a
Exactly.
Niravakashatvam, at least here.
Exactly. So, is there a Niravakashatvam? Yes. For some part of the sutram, there is Niravakashatvam. Now, there is no need to distinguish between full sutra versus some sutra. In full sutra, you say Nirvakashatvam apavadasya bijam. Why? Panini wouldn't write that sutra. That's what your argument is. If the utsarga has to win over apavada, Panini wouldn't write apavada. So Nirvakashatvam apavadasya bijam. Same thing over here. If Panini wanted Yadapaha only, he wouldn't have written Neram Nadyam Nibhyaha, the up component in Neram Nadyam Nibhyaha.
Neram Nadyam Nibhya is Parasutra, so why can't you use that logic?
Same question you asked last time. Unless Utsarga Apavada is resolved, Purvapara cannot be considered. The
Not
Shastra tells you that when you want to talk about two sutras, the first thing is Utsargapavada relationship. If that relationship cannot solve your problem, then go to Antaranga Bahiranga relationship. If not, then go to Nitya Anitya relationship. If not, then go to Purvapara relationship. In this particular context, there is Utsargapavada relationship. Therefore, you cannot go to Purvapara. I am not saying Purvapara will not give correct answer. I am saying it is not the right tool to be used.
Yeah, but it's not clear why there is an Utsarga Apavada relationship.
Niravakashatvam apavadasya bijam. Yena na prapte yo vidhihi, not yat sutram. Yo vidhihi arabhyate saha apavadaha. Is that definition applicable for Niram Nadyamnibhyaha versus Yadapaha? Yes or no?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Stop there. Don't go ahead. Therefore, Utsargapavad. Maybe Purvapara is
Mahodaya,
also possible. Maybe there are 10 other possible ways to solve the same problem. Shastra tells you have to apply Utsargapavad. Why? Because there will be other cases where Purvapara will give a wrong answer. Maybe in this case it is giving the correct answer. Why worry about it? But there will be other cases where Purvapara will give the wrong answer.
Mahoday, the part where you're saying you should not take it as steps, right? That is not clear. Like, see, when there is an utsarga apavada, you're making a decision and you're saying one sutra is selected, right? And then you apply it. And then again, so that is still considered as a step, right? Where you make a decision between, there is a competition. I mean, not like Vipratisheda, but there is a
Look at the
possibility of
paribhasha.
application.
Look at the paribhasha. It doesn't say Kvachid apavadad anantaram api utsargaha abhivinivishate. It says Kvachid apavada vishaye api utsargaha abhivinivishate. What is the difference between apavada vishaye and apavadad anantaram? For practical purposes, to understand the prakriya, we are saying apavada will come first, then utsarga will come, and then there are two different steps. But there is no concept of steps when it comes to application of utsarga and apavada or application of both. We are saying that apavada is applicable in the same context utsarga is applicable. How many steps you write is irrelevant. See, Takra Kaundinya Nyaya, he can take curd first and then buttermilk, or he can take buttermilk first and then curd. You don't say that after taking curd, now there is a different instance where a buttermilk is taken. Basically, Dadi Brahmanebhyo Diyatam Takram Kaundinyaya simply says offer curd and offer buttermilk. Technically, there might be two servants, one giving curd and one giving buttermilk, and at the same minute instance in time, he can catch both with both hands. But all these are irrelevant details. Even if he takes curd first and then somebody brings takra and then gives takra, it's not saying that after curd is given, now you are getting takra. It's not that how we interpret it. We are saying takra and curd were applicable at the same time, and just for practicality, one was brought first. You get what I'm saying? It is
So,
not two
with,
steps.
yeah.
That was your confusion.
Mm.
Right? Same thing is happening. Yada Paha and Niram Nadyamnibhyaha are applicable in the same step. You break it up separately for your understanding of Prakriya. That is the reason I gave the example of Phalani. In Phalani, you might not have understood the importance of that example. Numagama happens, and based on that Numagama, Dirgha happens. So there it's clearly two distinct instances of time. There you cannot apply the result of the first resolution with the second resolution because two different karyas. Numagama will happen in presence of she, and then because the Nakaranta Anga is there, Sarvanama Sthanecha Asambuddha will cause the
Upada Dirgha.
clear. So two different steps. This is a valid example of two different steps. Whereas what we are talking is convenience of writing the same prakriya on two different steps.
I just have to think some more examples, Mahoday.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'll come back.
please. We will probably see a few more examples.
Mahodaya,
Yes.
I just want to know, like usually when we are doing a prakriya, we do the pratyaya karya first, right? Am I right in understanding?
No.
Is there a rule or
There's no
something
such
like that?
there's no such rule like that. In fact, when I taught Kradanta Prakranam, I taught 10, 12 different karyas that should be done before the pratyaya even appears. So this is not correct to say pratyaya karya is done first.
Mostly that is a Nitya.
It can also be antaranga. So pratyaya is in one sense bahiranga because it is an external entity. If there is an antaranga karya which happens, if there is an anaimittika karya which happens. So for example, vadi is the dhatu. You do iditonam dhatoho vanda. Usually you do it before the pratyaya comes in. So you do vanda and then the pratyaya comes in. So namagama happens before the pratyaya appears. There are reasons for that. We'll not go in those details. So basically we were talking when it comes to utsarga and apavada, the apavada can permanently block the utsarga. There we have satyapi sambhave and asati sambhave badhanam bhavati. Or the utsarga fails to block the apavada, There we have Kvachid Apavada Vishaye Utsargaha Abhinivishate. There are a few more paribhashas to explain the same context. Apavada fails to block the Utsarga immediately next to Purastad Apavadaha Anantaran Vidhin Badhante Nottaran Madhye Apavadaha Purvan Vidhin Badhante Nottaran. Have you studied these paribhashas by any chance?
Yes, Mahodaya, the Purastad Apavadaha Anantaran Vidhin Badante. In case of the Athogune and the Prathame of Purva Savarnaha, like in
Keep that
that
aside.
context.
Keep that is aside. Probably we'll take one full class for that discussion. But you must have studied Purastad Apavadaha in a different context. Anybody remembers?
The Sandhi Prakaranava.
In the Sandhi Prakaranam. But what does Purastad Apavadaha say? Forget about the examples. What does this paribhasha say?
If
Purastad
an
Apavadaha.
apavada is placed before the utsarga, it blocks the first utsarga only. If there is anything else after that, it doesn't block them.
The classic example that is given is Etedhatyutsu. Etedhatyutsu is an apavada. अवर्णात् ईणधातोः विषये वृद्ध्यादेशः भवति. Etedhatyutsu is the apavada. I think I might have written the badhyabadaka bhava over here. Look at this. Etedhatyutsu is the apavada and engi pararupam is the utsarga. Okay, engi pararupam comes 6 sutras later. Engi pararupam, I'll open it in a different tab. Engi pararupam says avarnantad upasargat ekaradi dhatu rupe pare. Multiple ekaradi dhatus are possible, ejate, oshati, and so on. Whereas etedhatyutsu is explicitly for ina dhatu and edha dhatu. So for ina dhatu and edha dhatu, even if it does not have avarnat upasargat, that is considered a part of the sutra because these are the only examples taken. So in case of ina dhatu and edha dhatu, etyadhatyutsu sutra is applicable, which gives the vruddhi. In case of general ekaradi forms, the engi pararupam is possible, giving pararupa ekadesha. Who is apavada? Etyadhatyutsu is apavada. Who is the utsarga? Engi pararupam is the utsarga. So, edadhatoho, edadhatoho ekaradi yadrupam tasya vishaye engi pararupam ityasya apavada rupena etyadhatyutsu iti sutram pravartate. Asati sambhave badhanam bhavati. So, apavada will block the utsarga. Clear? Who is the apavada? Etyadhatyutsu. It
Etyadathyutsu.
comes first, then comes the utsarga. What this means is that purastat apavadaha anantaran vidhin badhante na uttaran. If there is any further utsarga below down, the utsarga that we saw is 6194. If there is any further utsarga below down, if this next sutra 6195 Om Angosha turns out to be the utsarga, then Etedhatyutsu cannot block Om Angosha. Clear? Now it turns out Om Angosha is actually an utsarga for Etedhatyutsu. Why? In case of an example like Shiva plus A plus Ahi, you have that particular Shiva plus Ahi. Now here there is no upasarga coming in the picture. So Shiva plus Ahi ityatra etedhatyutsu ityanena vruddhi ekadeshah sambhavati. It is blocked by paratva by Omangosha. Omangosha is technically an utsarga, but it does not get blocked by apavada. We will discuss these aspects in further details when we come to Sandhi Prakaranam. We have not yet started Sandhi Prakaranam in Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi. We will talk about all these examples in details in the Sandhi Prakaranam. For now, in the Badhya Badhaka Bhava, even if you don't understand these examples 100%, take my words for it if you don't understand for now. We have order of 3 sutras. Etyadhatyutsu is the Apavada, Engi Pararupam is first Utsarga, Omangosha is second Utsarga. Omangosha cannot be blocked by Etedhatyutsu. This is Purastad Apavadaha Anantaran Vidhin Badhante Nottaran. The third paribhasha in the sequence, मध्ये अपवादाः पूर्वान् विधीन् बाधन्ते नोत्तरान्. What would the paribhasha mean? Madhye apavadaha. If an apavada happens to be sandwiched between an utsarga on the top and utsarga on the bottom, it will only act as an apavada for utsarga on the top. It will not act as an apavada for utsarga on the bottom. The classic example, again, I'm just going to quickly run through the example. It is okay if you don't understand. There is a sutra called Ino Yana. Ino Yana Sutra says, Ina dhatoho vishaye अच्छवर्णे परे यणादेशः भवति. The achvarna in front of ina dhatu will cause yanadesha. Now technically when ach letter is present in front of ina dhatu, two things can happen. Can somebody tell me what are the two things? There is an ina dhatu. Ina is e. Ina is itsamneka. It's just e. So e plus acha. Acha is not ach pratyaya. Any ach letter. Two possibilities are there.
Punavritti.
Achishnu dhatu
Ah,
dhruvam.
correct, correct. So one is guna or vruddhi. Let's take vruddhi or let's take guna vruddhi. So guna vruddhi is one possibility, and achishna dhatu bhruvam is another possibility. Both of them are general enough. This sutram is specifically for ino dhatu, so it is apavada for ino dhatu. What does achishnu dhatu bhruvam say? Iyang adesha
Yang
bhavati.
adesh.
What does सार्वधातुक अर्धधातुकयोः से गुणः भवति और अचोणिति से वृद्धिः भवति. So you have achoniti which causes vruddhi. You have sarvadhatuka ardhadhatukayoho which causes guna. You can have multiple of them. You can have achishnu dhatu bhruvam which causes iyangadesha. So many utsargas are there. Only one apavada called inoyan. Clear, not clear? Now what happens? If you look at the sequencing, achishnu dhatu bhruvam comes before. So that is utsarga before apavada. Whereas sarvadhatuka ardhadhatuka yoho is 7.3. So this we are here in 6.4. Sarvadhatuka ardhadhatuka yoho is 7.3. So sarvadhatuka ardhadhatuka yoho is much later. Achoniti is much later. Achoniti is 7.2. So achoniti is an utsarga that appears later. Sarvadhatuka ardhadhatukayo is the utsarga that appears later. Achishnu dhatu bhruvam is the utsarga that appears earlier. Madhye apavadaha purvan vidhin badhante nottaran. Ino yana will only block achishnu dhatu bhruvam. Ino yana cannot block sarvadhatuka ardhadhatukayo. It cannot block achoniti. Therefore, in case of lat lakara e plus g, lat lakara prathama purusha bahuvachana, अचिष्णु धातु भ्रुवाम इत्यनेन इयंगादेशे प्राप्ते अपवादत्वेन यणादेशः भवति. So then by ino yana it becomes ya. Technically it should have been ya. Iyangadesha should have had happened, but that is blocked by yanadesha. So ya plus amti yanti. Whereas when it comes to anvul pratyaya, it is still ajadi pratyaya. But for anvul pratyaya, ino yana iti yakarasya yanadeshe prapte paratvat achoniti iti vruddhi bhavati. मध्ये पवादाः पूर्वान् विधीन् बाधन्ते नोत्तरान् अनया परिभाषया यणादेशः इयङ् इत्यस्य अपवादरूपेण गुणवृद्धेः अपवादत्वेन न विधीयते. Clear? Again, it's okay if you do not understand the sutras over here. For now, you have to understand that the middle apavadas are blocking only the previous utsargas and not the later occurring utsargas.
So why should we call the latter one as an utsarga? Why not the latter is an apvada to the previous one?
How is an apavada defined? Niravakashatvam apavadasya bijam. Take sarvadhatuka ardhadhatukayo for example. For any sarvadhatuka and ardhadhatuka pratyaya, guna happens. That happens to be the outer circle. Ino yana happens to be the inner circle. Therefore, ino yana is an apavada and sarvadhatuka ardhadhatukayo is the utsarga. Okay, that is the fundamental reason why I distinguished utsarga apavada definition from who wins and who loses. The definition of utsarga apavada is by drawing circles. You need to draw circles, that you need to study the sutras properly. You cannot just like take a look at the sutra and draw circles. A sutra might have multiple small components. It might have different circles. We are going to talk about akasavarni dirgha and iko yanachi and adgunaha probably in the next class. Okay, all so take my words on this for now, that my in the sense commentaries. So take commentaries words on this for now, that is an apavada, the other two are utsargas. One utsarga is before, other utsarga is later. Only the previous utsarga gets blocked by apavada. So we have three paribhashas like this. We have क्वचित् अपवादविषये अपि उत्सर्गः अभिनिविशते, पुरस्तादपवादः अनन्तरान् विधीन् बाधन्ते नोत्तरान्, मध्ये पवादाः पूर्वान् विधीन् बाधन्ते नोत्तरान्. Clear?
And this
So
Purvan
that
is any Utsarga that is before, right? Even if there is more than one Utsarga that is stacked before
any
it,
utsarga
or
that is,
all of it will be.
every utsarga that is there in before. That is correct. Purvan vidhin badhante.
No,
Okay?
because the apavadaha iti dattam, so that's why I wasn't sure if it's that vidin is for the collective or.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Actually, it is a very good experience and exercise to take any one paribhasha and try to list down all possible examples. Unless you do that particular exercise, it's not possible for you to gain full understanding of these paribhashas. So, madhye apavadaha purvan vidhin. So, as you said, is there an example, or how many such examples are there where there are two utsargas and then there is apavada, and that apavada blocks both the utsargas? Same thing for purastad apavadaha. You can do detailed study of these paribhashas. Even one paribhasha can be a study for months together. People take PhD for detailed study of one paribhasha. So this is a lot to cover. The same thing was told to me by my teacher of Paribhasha Shekhara. So I just sat down and I did it for only two paribhashas, and it took enough amount of time. If I have to do that for all paribhashas, I have to stop everything, all classes, and then only focus on this, and then it will happen. Very complex and involved.
But we need to know at least what the sutra means and all, right? Like without
Exactly, that's also you need
that,
to
like
have a significant background in the Sutra Patha before you can even jump and try to enumerate examples like this, right? I wouldn't say you guys are at that stage at this moment. There's a lot to learn, and only then you will be able to enumerate these examples. But it's worth doing it at some point in time. So that's where we said when there is Apapada and when there is Utsarga, we have three choices. The third case is there will be two branches in the Prakriya. In one branch, Apavada will come, in other branch, Utsarga will come. Clear? All three possibilities are there. Permanent blocking, inability of blocking, and optional blocking. What is the example of optional blocking? Panini himself writes a sutram to allow optional blocking. Vasarupo striyam. Vasarupo striyam is a sutram, very important sutram in the Krudanta Prakaranam, which says apavada optionally blocks the utsarga in the Krudanta Prakaranam. Asmin dhatvadhikare pratyayah apavadaha, and apavada pratyaya va badhako bhavati, optionally becomes a badhaka. I'm going to give you examples. What example? Let's take this sutram tavyat tavyaniyaraha. This particular sutram says sarvebhyah dhatubhyah tavya iti pratyayah bhavati. Tavyat iti pratyayah bhavati. Aniyar iti pratyayah bhavati. Three different pratyayas given in the same sutram. Tavya, tavyat, aniyar. So patha becomes pathitavya. Patha becomes pathaniya. So different pratyayas are given. Kebhyah dhatubhyah, sarvebhyah dhatubhyah. The immediate next sutra says achoyat. अजंत धातुभ्यः यत इति प्रत्ययः विधीयते. Look at the consecutive sutras. सर्वेभ्यः धातुभ्यः तव्य प्रत्ययः, अजंतेभ्यः धातुभ्यः यत प्रत्ययः. Do you see niravakashatvam over here? Do you see utsargapavadatvam over here? सर्वेभ्यः धातुभ्यः तव्य प्रत्ययः. I'm just take one example. Don't take all three. सर्वेभ्यः धातुभ्यः तव्य प्रत्ययः, अजन्तेभ्यः धातुभ्यः यत प्रत्ययः. When it comes to ajanta dhatus, Using your normal Utsarga Apavada rule, what kind of pratyaya you will apply?
Yat.
What does the sutra say? Both are acceptable. Not one after the other. In two branches. If you want, you apply Tavya. If you want, you apply Yata. So Bhu can become Bhavaniya, Bhavitavya. It can also become Bhavya. Bhu plus Yata is Bhavya. Okay. Second example. णवुल् तृचौ सर्वेभ्यः धातुभ्यः णवुल् प्रत्ययः भवति तृच् प्रत्ययः भवति. And on the next line he says Nandigrahi pachadibhyo lyuninyachah pachadi ganebhyah ach pratyah. We have seen this sutra while learning about Mangalacharanam. Pachadi ganasya dhatunam vishaye ach pratyah bhavati. Sarvebhyah dhatubhyah णुवुल् pratyah bhavati. Utsarga and apavada. If the dhatu is in the pachadi gana, pacha dhatu for example, can you apply णुवुल्? Yes. Can you apply ach? Yes. पचादिभ्यः अच इत्यनेन अच प्रत्ययः अपि भवति. णुवुल् प्रत्ययः णुवुल् तृचौ इत्यनेन अपि भवति. Not one after the other, but one branch णुवुल्, other branch अच. अपवादः उत्सर्गं विकल्पेन बाधते. All three possibilities are there. Okay, one of them is captured by Panini himself in the Sutram Vasarupostriyam. The other two are captured by paribhashas. Yena na prapte yo vidhirarabhyase satasya badhako bhavati is one, and a set of three paribhashas, kvachid apavada vishay utsarga abhirvishate, madhye pavadaha, and purastad. Three paribhashas. Okay, so the takeaway message of today's class is that definition of apavada is different than the badhya badhakatva between the apavada and utsarga. Yena na prapte yo vidhirarabhyate, niravakashatvam is the definition of apavada. And when it comes to the conflict between utsarga and apavada, there are three possible ways. Apavada will compulsorily block the utsarga. Apavada will partially or optionally block the utsarga. Apavada will fail to block the utsarga. We have seen examples of all of them.